Welcome to Sabs podcast. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. My special guest today is Dennis Kucinich. He is a former congressman of Ohio's 10th Congressional District, and he's also former campaign manager of RFK Jr.'s campaign. Welcome, Dennis. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Sabby, I've looked forward to a chance to be on your show. So thank you for the invitation, and I'm grateful for this discussion.
So you actually announced really big news. I saw the tweet from you as well, where you said, today I declared my independence. I'm running for Congress as an independent in Ohio's 7th Congressional District. Join me. And I actually watched that speech earlier. So I think the first question that I have for you is, why did you decide to run for Congress again? And why did you decide to run this time as an independent?
Well, at this very moment, America is in trouble. It's gone off on these adventures in other countries. It's neglecting things here at home. We have the people in my old district, which is a substantial part of this 7th district I'm running in, are beset by inflation, the high cost of food, the cost of energy, being able to protect their homes against these corporate raiders who are building monopolies in housing. People are concerned about the cost of childcare, of healthcare, and that's a territory that I've worked on for decades, and it's time to move forward, but not as a partisan. Part of what's going on in the country right now is the partisanship is so intense that, and the fractures exist even within the parties. People are talking past each other. I, with my experience and being able to work across the political spectrum, I know I can make a difference and try to help heal the divide and focus on the things that are important to the American people here at home. So, that's why I'm running. I believe there's absolutely a great chance that with the help of the people in this district and nationally, I could very well be the only independent elected to the next Congress. And that would put me in a pivotal position to be able to help guide our country in a new direction, which it certainly needs to go in.
So, Dennis, obviously, as you know, I think one of the challenges that's facing a lot of political candidates today that are running for Congress, even some of the ones that are already seated in Congress, more so from some of the squad members, is there's a lot of opposition from organizations like APAC, right? So I think we all remember Nina Turner. She ran for Congress, although she ran through the Democratic Party. She faced tremendous opposition and big money from organizations like APAC that she unfortunately, she was not able to defeat that. How would you push back against organizations that are part of the Israeli lobby, considering they are heavily targeting progressive voices today?
Yeah, I first of all, I have a national constituency, and time again, that constituency has come to my defense, both financially and with people volunteering in our campaign. We set up a website at Kucinich.com so people can participate. Now, as far as the lobby that you discussed, APAC, look, I never put myself in polarity with anybody on these issues. I very firmly have stood for peace in the Middle East. The Palestinians have rights that have long-standing claim that have been ignored. I've spoken to that. People who are very strongly in defense of Israel, they're listening to what I say. And I think there is a concern about Israel's strongest supporters that, hey, the government in Israel is overreaching, and they could be putting their state itself in jeopardy by the ethnic cleansing that's going on, by the overreach that is so obvious from the far right clinics. So my position is this: as someone who has been able to take a strong stand for peace, has been able to look at unifying the opposites in almost a Blakean way of looking at these polarities that exist and finding a way to cross the partisan and ideological divide, to find a way to heal those divisions. And if there was ever a time when a voice was needed to do that, it's now. And the Middle East is a perfect example And it's not just about Israel. First and foremost, it's about the United States of America. Our foreign policy has gone off the rails years ago, and it's hurt the American people. It's hurt our ability to meet our own needs here at home. And so my candidacy is about addressing the concerns that the American people have and the people of the 7th District have with respect to their own economic interests, challenging the this military-industrial complex, which is run amok, and which becomes its own justification by inspiring conflict everywhere. And our national policies have followed right in line against the specific interests of the American people. So I'm not worried about any lobby. I'm the people's lobbyist, and I will be that in the Congress of the United States.
Awesome. So I guess the next question I have for you in reference to some of the turmoil that's happening in Congress today, like you said, there's division among the parties, but there's also division inside the parties as well. You have the squad members, a part of the Democratic Party, that have been facing tremendous opposition from Democrat leadership, so much to the point where they've decided to go along with Democrat leadership, oftentimes refusing to force the vote for Medicare for All during Nancy Pelosi's leadership. Refusing to support the railroad workers, trying to go on strike during, I think also during Nancy Pelosi's leadership, but also even under Hakeem Jeffries' leadership, they seem to be going more along with Democrat establishment, with the exception of someone like Rashida Tlaib in reference to Israel and Palestine. She's been very vocal in support of the Palestinian people, so much to the point where they censured Rashida Tlaib. You were actually in office under the Clinton administration, under the Bush administration. I would imagine during that time, being supportive of progressive issues was probably a little bit more difficult than it is for people today. So why do you feel some of these other members that supported those progressive policies, like members of the squad, why do you feel they are not choosing to fight back against Democrat Party leadership?
Well, first of all, Sabby, you have basically articulated the reason why I'm running as an independent. That I'm not going to be locked into any groupthink that would be adverse to the interests of my constituents. I wasn't when I was in Congress, but if I had a difference of opinion with leadership, and I often did, particularly on matters of war and impeachment, I'd go to the leadership. I tell them exactly what I was going to do. I didn't set myself in polarity to them, but I was very firm about the positions that I would take. And, sometimes I got their support, sometimes I didn't. But I always observed my own light, my own clarion call to take a stand. And I think that's probably the most important thing about being a member of Congress, that whatever the party is doing, one must listen to that inner voice of justice. Take a stand and not be afraid, of the consequences as far as advancement and things like that. Those things are all chimerical. What's important is, what do you believe in? What do you stand for? Are you willing to take a position on behalf of those who maybe it isn't popular? Being in Congress isn't about doing the thing that's popular. It's about doing what's right, and what's popular isn't always what's right. I'll give you an example. The march towards war in Iraq. It wasn't popular to take on that war, although I did. I organized 125 Democrats against the war, but unfortunately, majority of Congress, the administration decided to go and attack Iraq, a war that was absolutely based on lies. It wasn't a popular position at the time. I'll go back to Congress to use the experience that I have to help guide members to a better position for the country. Because we're losing sight of what our country's about. We were never meant to be some kind of a military juggernaut around the world. We were never meant to go into other countries and tell them how to run their country and run their business, but that's exactly what we're doing. And so, with the experience that I have, having been, I can say this, I can say this with accuracy. I've been right on every major foreign policy issue during my time of service in the House of Representatives. Why? Because I'm not bought. Nobody can tell me what I have to think. I take a stand based on the truth, based on the practical aspirations of my constituents. And so because of that, I'm in a position in this next Congress as an independent to be able to help balance the partisan energies right now that are way out of whack, with people at each other's throats, the bitterness, the divisiveness. It's antithetical to the interests of the United States of America. The whole idea of United States is fractured right now. And so, my reemergence onto the political scene is one which can reset the pointer of the political center. And I certainly intend to do that, but I can't do it alone. You have a very powerful listenership there. And I would ask anybody who's interested in this endeavor to go to Kucinich.com and see how you might be able to help. Because I'm not doing this for me. I've had all the involvement anybody could ever have in political life, but our country needs help right now. And so I see it as a duty to step forward.
So I've been to Ohio only once, and that was to go to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So that's all I know about in reference to Ohio. What would you say are some of the needs of people that live in the 7th Congressional District of Ohio? What are some of the needs that are not being met at this point in time?
Well, I would say they're economic to begin with. It's about wages, about benefits. People have to have jobs. They have to have good paying jobs. A lot of people are working a couple of jobs just to make ends meet. There's people in a family where both, you have two people working in a family, sometimes more, just to keep a family going. We've gone through a period of rampant inflation. And frankly, with the national debt continuing to soar and interest rates being high, it's middle class, working class families are getting hit hard. The cost of things are going up. And no one has made the connection in Washington about these trillions of dollars that we spend on war, what the implications are for our communities. They put these wars on a credit card, drive up the debt, make money tighter, have greater difficulty for businesses, for families just trying to survive. And so I will be that person in Congress who helps make the connection between what's happening internationally and what's happening in the 7th Congressional District. We've got to look at the cost of energy, cost of utilities, the cost of food, the cost of housing, the cost of childcare, the cost of education, and on and on and on. And I know about that. I'm closer to people. I know people are struggling to make ends meet. And I know they want someone who not just understands that, who is ready to emerge once again as a champion to focus on what's important for Americans. Enough of these wars everywhere, enough of funding, blowing up people all over the planet. We have to stop that. And it's time. And I think the American people are ready for that message. And I think they're ready for a voice in the Congress that's independent and not guided by partisan considerations, but about the broad-based needs of the American people.
How do you feel about the labor movement? Recently, it was just announced by the UAW that they are going to endorse Joe Biden. I think this is a mistake for the labor movement in this country, considering that they demanded a ceasefire in Gaza. So they're willing to endorse him regardless of that happening. I also think it's dangerous for a labor movement to basically be attached to the duopoly, whether it's the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, because those parties have a tendency to co-opt the message of those organizations and water it down. And that's what I feel is happening to the UAW. I saw it with the railroad workers when they were trying to go on strike. Again, Joe Biden was able to come in and Congress and even some of the squad members and basically prevent them from going on strike. It's really scary to me when a political party has this type of hold on workers' rights in this country. How do you feel about all of these employees that have organized over the past 2 years going on strikes? And now it seems like the Democratic Party has found a way to take a hold of that.
Well, political parties, again and again, have failed the labor movement. No question about it. I mean, I come from the House of Labor. I've been a member of several labor organizations. Most recently, Local 600 of the IATSE. I have a gold card net union for years of involvement as a director of photography. And it's been disappointing time and again for labor to look at the Democratic Party and ask the party to deliver, and then they don't. And there's a ceremony of innocence which is continually drowned, you could say. The UAW has really taken a stand on behalf of working men and women under its leadership, and I think that it's very important from the economic gains that they've been able to get for auto workers. It's hugely important. On the other hand, their support of President Biden, I think, will put increasing pressure on the White House to start to deliver in the period between now and the election. I think that's probably the calculus. I mean, to be clear, I mean, in the district I'm running in, there's a lot of auto workers out there. And, and it's something I have a long involvement with the auto workers. My father was working as a member of the UAW when I was born. So that's like right on my birth certificate. So I'm sensitive to not just labor, auto workers. We have steel workers here. We have a very broad labor movement, but it's time for both political parties to deliver for working men and women, because it's a labor movement that has enabled people to have a middle class standard of living. And it was the Democratic Party under Bill Clinton, unfortunately, which led the way for NAFTA, which brought about a destructive undermining of the quality of life of working men and women, the middle class, and flipped the script as far as the ability to be able to support a family and to have a decent quality of life overall. So, I don't have any illusions about the political system's failure to deliver for working people. My re-emergence and arrival in Congress as an independent will enable me to focus on those economic issues that are so critical to working men and women, that are absolutely imperative to be able to reestablish a middle class which has been slowly whittled away, and to be the voice of people right now don't have a voice because people just close ranks on a partisan basis. And frankly, alarmingly, a lot of these economic issues just get shoved aside and ends up being like a Punch and Judy show instead of a real debate over America's priorities, which I can promise you I will help spark.
I want to pivot to foreign policy. I want to start with the war in Ukraine. There has been a divide in Congress in reference to funding this war. Some of them are Republicans, some of them are Democrats. It's interesting. There seems to be bipartisan support in reference to whether or not we should continue to fund Ukraine. It's very clear to me that Ukraine does not have a path to victory based on what I've seen. Russia obviously has a powerful weapons, powerful military. They also have a neighbor next door to them called China that they're pretty cozy together. I could see China, if they need to come to Russia's defense. And yet here we are, over a year of this war. And now there is this fight once again in Congress, whether or not to give more funding to Ukraine. Now, what would you say to people if you were elected in Congress this time around, even as an independent? What would your stance be in reference to funding the Ukraine war? And what do you think needs to happen in reference to Zelensky and Vladimir Putin?
That war is already over. And it should have never been fought. The United States government, and some of these people are still in the government, helped to engineer a coup against the leadership of Ukraine at the exact time that leadership was trying to find a way to bolster the economic condition of Ukrainians. And the United States was more interested in trying to seize an advantage against Russia than they were in the interest of Ukrainian people. If you're really interested in helping Ukrainian people, you don't cause hundreds of thousands of their young men and some women to be thrown into this murderous maw of a war with Russia. You don't, if you're interested in helping Ukrainian people, you don't help to incite violence in the provinces of Donetsk and Luhansk, knowing full well that Russia will be called upon to defend those Russians who live in those provinces that are part of Ukraine. This whole thing should have been avoided. And my voice in the Congress will help the United States move away from this kind of dalliance with World War III. What do we think we're going to do? We're going to knock off the government of Russia? I mean, what are these people in Washington smoking when they think that they're going to be able to usurp the Russian government, and then what? Then we're going to run Russia or run it by proxy? It really is crazy. And so this war has been responsible for driving up energy prices. It's been responsible for stripping Ukraine of its prime agricultural production, the productivity of Ukraine, which has some of the best before this war had some of the best agriculture in the world. It changed energy markets. It's caused a collapse of markets in Europe. It could result in the demise of the German government because of its fealty to U.S. policy. If it's done anything, it's underscored the total fecklessness of NATO. I mean, what is NATO about? You know, as far as I'm concerned, the United States of America must stop using sock puppets for foreign policy. We have to do things in our name or not do them at all. And we shouldn't have done Ukraine. We shouldn't pretend that NATO is somehow an independent voice. It's not. And we have to regain our own sovereignty and not franchise it out to these various groups in every area of public policy. So the world owes a debt to the Ukrainian people. It has to be paid with rebuilding Ukraine, with rebuilding its institutions, restoring its agricultural productivity, making it possible for people to go back to at least the areas where they lived in, even if their homes or businesses have been destroyed. We have to rebuild that. That's what the focus ought to be right now. But that war, for all intents and purposes, is over. And every objective that the Biden administration had over there has been an abject, abysmal failure. And it's further reason why this Blinken, Newland group, Sullivan, why they should all be cashiered.
Well said. And speaking of rebuilding, recently Kamala Harris made a statement. I think this was about a couple of weeks ago. She said that Gaza will have to be rebuilt. So this brings me to the war in Gaza. Kamala Harris made that statement. Biden has had discussions with Netanyahu about it is important the way that you fight this war, but Netanyahu is doing whatever he wants to do. The war continues. Gaza is pretty much demolished. Israel has attacked hospitals. I think all the hospitals in Gaza are demolished now. They've attacked the last university that was in Gaza. So there's really nothing left for the Palestinian people in Gaza. I have said, obviously, a ceasefire needs to happen, a permanent ceasefire, but I think that's the bare minimum. There's also the question of what is going to happen to the Palestinian people after this war ends. And where do you stand on that issue in reference to the Palestinian people having self-determination? And what do you think should happen in reference to the U.S. government and particularly the Democratic Party still supporting Netanyahu?
First of all, what's happened in Gaza and what's happening in the West Bank, for that matter, is an enormous human tragedy that did not have to happen. Now, I don't sanction what happened on October 7th, but we must be aware that there's a long line of insults and usurpations which occurred before that, adversity in the interests of the Palestinian people. We must also recognize that there are those people who want to abolish the state of Israel. I'm not one of those. But we have to be very clear that ethnic cleansing is ethnic cleansing, no matter who does it. And that the attack on Gaza has represented a challenge to our entire Western civilization as to whether or not we will sanction wholesale slaughter of people based on their ethnicity. I mean, this is happening in 2023, 2024 is a real commentary on how passions can be whipped up and can result in people engaging in a murderous exchange and slaughter. And to be sure, we are in the foothills of World War III right now. There's no question about it. And this is where the United States of America needed to ask what is in the interest of the American people, first and foremost. I don't think we've really asked that question. We can advise our friends in Israel that this effort to try of ethnic cleansing is not only, grossly illegal, but it also is counterproductive because the existence of the state of Israel itself could become at issue if this war continues to build out. And I don't know if there's been any foresight on that at all. It's just there's some automaton moving forward senselessly, slaughtering people without thinking about what the consequences might be. Well, I think about that all the time. And I think that there ought to be a ceasefire, and there has to be a cessation of the violence that has been ongoing in the West Bank, a cessation of the violence that continues to be propelled in Gaza, and a measure of accountability for the perpetrators. And the United States of America must stop funding the slaughter.
I agree. I totally hear you. Why do you think some of the politicians are willing to say stop funding Ukraine, but when you change the country to Israel, they seem to have no problem with funding Israel?
Because Israel has support in the Congress. That's not a surprise. I understand that. And my colleagues who support Israel, look, I understand that. On the other hand, who are we as Americans? What do we stand for? I don't believe the American people justify the slaughter of innocents anywhere in the world. I refuse to believe that our people, who are essentially just trying to make ends meet, trying to live their lives, who understand hardship in some quarters, that they're going to want to impose it on somebody else using our tax dollars. I think when it's presented to the American people in a way that says, look, what are our priorities? Are we going to take care of things back here at home? Or are we more interested in starting World War III? Tough question to answer, right? So I'm going to be proposing questions like that. And we have to stop this violence in the Middle East. And the United States has to quit playing games and pretending that, we're for stopping and then we continue. Let's rebuild and then we bomb first and then we're going to rebuild later. It's madness. But there is a method to that madness. And the method is laid out by people like Smotrich and Ben-Gvir from Netanyahu's coalition, who are playing their agenda out, holding Netanyahu hostage, and actually working in a way that I would say would not coincide with the best interest of Israel, let alone, of course, the Palestinian people. My voice in Congress will help direct the country towards what American policy ought to be, not on behalf of any other country, but what's best for America. And what do we start to do to address the needs of our people here at home? And, Sabby, I'll tell you, as someone who follows these events on an hourly basis, we still could end up in a much broader conflict in the Middle East. We're on a threshold of a regional war that could become a world war. And I'm very concerned about that. I'm concerned about our brave men and women who are out there right now, the Navy SEALs who perished, about these traumatic brain injuries that we're hearing of soldiers who are in places that are subject to a rocket attack. Why are we doing this? Why are we putting our men and women at risk there? What's it all about? And so I'm going to be that voice to help develop a path towards peace, but also takes a very firm stand about what are the interests of the United States of America and why in the world are we helping to fund the deaths of tens of thousands of people and more anywhere in the world.
Well said, Dennis. Well, we all know, like, you were previously a part of RFK Jr.'s campaign. I think there were a lot of people that were really excited from the very beginning because of some of the issues that RFK was running on. And then this issue of Israel and Gaza came up, and we realized that when it came to, at least I realized when it came to that particular issue, I did not agree with his stance in reference to Israel and Gaza. In fact, I was quite appalled, and I did not understand why he was not willing to have these discussions with someone like a Max Blumenthal, who has been to Gaza, who has written about it, or someone like Miko Palid, who his father was actually a general in the IDF, and Miko Palid is a strong supporter of BDS and fighting for the Palestinian people. So I think it's been a disappointment for a lot of people. In the grand scheme of things, when you look at this presidential election for 2024, there are three, I would say, post-duopolists that are running. RFK Jr., Cornel West, and Jill Stein are three that are, I would say, the most known. There's also Claudia de la Cruz. There's also Dr. Shiva as well. As much as you can tell us, because I know that you're not a part of that campaign anymore, do you foresee RFK Jr. maybe changing his position on that particular issue, and why or why not? And what do you think about this idea that we probably could have a chance this time around to break the duopoly?
Well, first of all, Israel never had a stronger supporter than Robert F. Kennedy Jr., period. And that's something that some people have challenged, but he's there 100%. Now, I consider myself a supporter of Israel, and I say, Israel, get out of Gaza, stop the slaughter, stop the war, protect the state of Israel. But, there's different ways of looking how you support Israel. I want to see the Israelis and the Palestinians come to a point of peace where no one worries about their security or the security of their families. Now, Bobby Kennedy Jr. has been very eloquent in his defense of Israel. Now, as far as the bigger picture here of the 2024 election, as an independent, I am truly independent of all the other campaigns. I'm not involved in any other campaign right now. I'm focusing on my election to House of Representatives as an independent. And anybody who's interested in joining that, go to Kucinich.com, figure out how you can help. I appreciate the help. I need the help. This election, at this point, is going to be, I think it's going to be very close. I can't tell you how it's going to turn out, but it looks like President Trump and President Biden they're certainly headed for a rematch. And I wouldn't predict the outcome, which is one of the reasons why I'm running, because somebody's going to need to be in Washington to be a voice for sanity, for the survival of the American economy, for focusing in on dealing with what's important to the American people, for avoiding these foreign adventures. That's why I'm running. And so no matter who wins, if President Biden wins again, I've known him since 1972. I can find a way to try to help work with the administration to guide them towards better choices. If Donald Trump wins, I'm certainly in a position to be able to offer advice from the floor of the House as to the direction that would be better for America. And if Kennedy or somebody else emerges, I can help there too. But I'm focused on my campaign, on this campaign, which quite possibly I could end up being the only independent elected to Congress in 2024, and as a result, be in a pivotal position with the Democrat and Republican margin between the two parties being so tight, to actually be in a pivotal position to be able to direct the country's fortunes and energy. And so this is such an important election. And Sabby, it means so much to have this discussion with you at the threshold of this campaign as we're entering into our effort to go back to this old area that I represented many years ago, this time as an independent.
Thank you so much, Dennis. I just want to make sure I plug your Substack just to let people know you are writing on Substack. There's a lot of information here about foreign policy. One of the most recent piece, Can Israel Survive If There Is No Ceasefire? So I encourage people to check that out.
Well, I appreciate that. And again, it's great to be on this show with this campaign. Kucinich.com is the place that I'd like to engage people. I'm going to have a very active social media presence during this campaign so that we can reach out to the broadest possible constituency. And think about this. You know, the recent Gallup poll says that 43% of Americans now describe themselves as independents, okay? 43%, and 27% Democrats and 27% Republicans. But there's no independent in the House of Representatives. But the people who are watching can help do something about that and helping our campaign, and go to Kucinich.com. So, Sabby, thank you. Great discussion. I appreciate being on your show.
Dennis Kucinich, thank you so much for coming on, and good luck.
Thank you.